The marketplace on Station Meridian 7 wasn't just busy. It was chaos wrapped in noise and covered in a layer of grime that never seemed to wash away. The air itself felt thick, heavy with the smell of too many species crammed into one space. Sweat, alien pheromones, and something that might have been fear all mixed together into a scent that made Kate Miller's nose wrinkle the moment she stepped through the entrance. She hadn't meant to be here at all. This was the exotic livestock section, a place where wealthy collectors and private security firms came shopping for creatures they could train, display, or use as living weapons. Kate was just a cargo hauler trying to refuel her ship and grab enough protein bars to last the next 2 weeks. But the station's corridors all looked the same after a while, and one wrong turn had landed her here. Cages lined every available wall space. Some held creatures she recognized from news feeds and documentary programs. Others were completely alien to her, their bodies defying everything she thought she knew about biology. They all had one thing in common though. They were all waiting. Waiting to be bought, sold, or processed for parts. The crowd of buyers moved like a slow river through the space, stopping at cages that caught their interest, moving on when the price climbed too high or the merchandise didn't meet expectations. Most of them weren't even humanoid. Kate spotted a floating gas bag species that communicated through color shifts, a massive insectoid trader with too many legs to count, and several species she couldn't even begin to identify. That's when she saw him. In the back corner, where the lighting was dimmer and the crowd had thinned out, a massive wolf-like creature lay chained to the floor. He was huge even lying down. His body was easily the size of an earth bear, covered in fur that might have once been beautiful but now looked matted and dirty. Silver gray mixed with darker patches where old blood had dried and never been properly cleaned. But it was the scars that really caught her attention. They were everywhere. Long ones across his ribs, small ones dotting his legs, a particularly nasty one that ran from his shoulder down to his chest. Each one told a story of violence, of battles fought and somehow survived. His face bore them too, cutting through the fur in pale lines that spoke of a life Kate couldn't even imagine. One of his eyes had gone completely white, clouded over like a marble. The other was a dull amber color that seemed to look at everything and nothing at the same time. That amber eye barely moved as the auction proceeded, as if he'd stopped caring what happened around him. Next lot. The auctioneer was a species Kate didn't recognize, with too many arms and a voice that carried across the marketplace like a whip crack. Liker male, 15 solar cycles old. Military stock from Venshara. Fully trained in combat operations, security protocols, and threat elimination. A handful of buyers drifted over, their interest clearly minimal. Kate watched as they pulled out scanning devices, pointing them at the wolf and reading whatever data appeared on their screens. Their expressions told her everything she needed to know before they even spoke. Too old, one of them said, shaking his head. He was some kind of reptilian species with scales that shifted from green to brown. Look at those joints. See how swollen they are? That's advanced arthritis. This thing probably can't even run anymore. Another buyer, this one vaguely humanoid but with skin that looked like polished metal, tapped at his datapad and frowned. Vision's half gone. Reaction time is probably shot. And look at the muscle degradation in the hindquarters. This animal is past its prime by at least 5 cycles. Not worth the feeding costs, the reptilian added, already turning away. Even if you got it free, the daily food intake for a liker this size would bankrupt a small operation. The auctioneer's enthusiasm, which hadn't been particularly high to begin with, completely died. His shoulders slumped and his multiple arms gestured in what might have been his species' version of a shrug. Come on folks. This is still a liker we're talking about. Apex predator from one of the harshest worlds in the known galaxy. These things are legendary. You don't get opportunities like this every day. Yeah, someone in the back of the small crowd called out with a laugh. Once in a lifetime because it's about to die. I'll pass, thanks. The crowd dispersed like smoke, moving on to younger, healthier, more profitable creatures in other cages. The auctioneer stood there for a moment, staring at his tablet with the expression of someone doing math they didn't like. Finally, he sighed and made a note with one of his many fingers. Send it to organ processing, he muttered to an assistant. At least we can recoup the cage fees. Liker organs fetch decent prices in the medical trade. Kate should have walked away. She had a schedule to keep, supplies to buy, and a cargo run that started in less than 6 hours. She had exactly 0 room in her life for complications, and taking on a massive, dying predator definitely qualified as a complication. But she didn't walk away. Instead, she stood there staring at that wolf. And he stared back with his one good eye. It wasn't defeat she saw there. It wasn't resignation or acceptance or any of the things she expected from a creature that had clearly been through hell and come out the other side damaged. It was something else entirely. Something that reminded her of her father in those last days after the mining accident on Mars, when his body was broken but his spirit refused to bend. Defiance. That's what it was. This creature might be old, scarred, and half-blind, but he hadn't given up. Not really. How much for the reject? The words were out of her mouth before her brain caught up. The auctioneer looked up, genuinely surprised to see a human standing there. His multiple eyes blinked in sequence like a wave. You want that thing? I asked how much. He looked at her for a long moment, then at the wolf, then back at her. Then he laughed. It was a strange sound like rocks tumbling in a metal barrel. Tell you what, human. You can have it. Free. No charge. Just get it off my station and save me the processing fee. Deal? Kate nodded before she could think better of it. 20 minutes later, she stood outside her ship, the Wanderer, with a limping giant wolf following behind her on a restraint leash the station had provided. His head came up to her shoulder even though he was hunched over, favoring his back leg. Each step looked painful, but he kept moving, kept following this strange alien who just bought his life for the price of nothing. Come on, big guy, Kate said softly, keeping her voice gentle. Let's get you somewhere safe. The Liker, who had once answered to the military designation Kravik 7 Alpha, didn't understand her words. The translator collar the auctioneer had thrown and worked one way, letting him understand commands, but he'd never learned to speak anything but his own language. But something in her tone, something in the way she moved, made him follow. For the first time in 3 years, someone had looked at him and seen something more than meat and organs. Someone had seen him. That was enough. The first 3 days were completely silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence either, but the heavy, waiting kind that sits in your chest and makes every breath feel deliberate. Kate had cleared out half her cargo bay the moment they got back to the Wanderer. She'd pushed crates of supplies to one side, stacked equipment against the walls, and created as much open space as she could manage. It wasn't much, but it was better than a cage. She'd laid down thermal blankets she usually used for temperature-sensitive cargo, the kind that adjusted automatically to body heat. She'd set up a water dispenser in the corner, the gravity-fed kind that wouldn't break down in deep space. She'd even rigged up some softer lighting, dimming the harsh cargo bay floods to something less institutional. The food had cost her more than she wanted to admit. Real meat from the station market, not the synthetic protein blocks most spacers lived on. Definitely not the gray nutrient slurry the auction house had been feeding their stock. She'd bought thick cuts of something the vendor promised was similar to Earth beef, flash-frozen for preservation. She placed the first meal in a clean bowl and slid it across the floor toward him, staying well back. The Liker hadn't even looked at it. He'd positioned himself in the far corner of the cargo bay as far from the door as possible and simply lay there. His amber eye tracked every movement she made, but his body remained completely still except for the slow rise and fall of his breathing. He was waiting. Waiting for the kindness to end, for the real purpose of all this to reveal itself. Kate understood. She'd seen rescue animals back on Earth do the same thing. Abused dogs that flinched at raised hands. Cats that hid for weeks before trusting their new homes. Trust wasn't something you could just give someone. It had to be earned piece by piece, day by day. So she gave him space. On the second day, she'd removed the untouched food and replaced it with a fresh portion. Same result. The meat sat there until it started to smell, and then she'd quietly taken it away while he watched with that unblinking eye. The third day repeated the pattern. Kate went about her business, running maintenance checks on the ship, organizing her cargo manifests, doing everything she normally did. She talked to him sometimes, keeping her voice low and even, not expecting any response. She told him about the ship, about the navigation system that kept glitching, about the weird sound the engine made when she pushed it past 80% thrust. She never pushed too close. Never made sudden movements. Never did anything that might seem like a threat. On the fourth day something changed. Kate sat down against the opposite wall with her own meal, a self-heating ration pack that smelled vaguely like chicken and vegetables. It wasn't good, but it was fuel. She ate slowly, aware that he was watching her. You know, she said between bites, I get it. Trust isn't free. Not after what you've been through. She stirred her ration pack, watching steam rise from the synthetic food. I don't know exactly what happened to you, but I can see the results. All those scars. That eye. The way you move, like every step hurts. The Liker's ear twitched. Just slightly. Kate kept talking, her voice soft. She told him about Earth, about growing up in the Mars colonies where her parents had worked the deep mines. She told him about the accident, about how she'd been 20 years old when the collapse happened. About how she'd gotten the call at 3 in the morning, station time, and known immediately that her world had ended. 17 people died that day, she said quietly. My mom, my dad, my Uncle Rick. All because someone wanted to cut costs on support structures. She set down her ration pack, appetite gone. The company said it was an unavoidable accident. Paid out the minimum compensation and moved on. Nobody cared that those were real people with families and dreams and lives they'd never get to finish. She looked directly at him, meeting that amber eye. My dad used to say something. He'd say every living thing deserves a sunset to rest under. Didn't matter if they were useful or profitable or productive. Didn't matter if they were old or young or broken. Everyone deserves peace at the end. She paused, feeling the weight of those words. I think you've earned about 1,000 sunsets, friend. And I'm going to make sure you get them. On the fourth night, when Kate came to check on him before bed, the food bowl was empty. She didn't make a big deal out of it. Just cleaned the bowl and left fresh water and another portion of meat. But inside, something warm bloomed in her chest. It was a start. The days that followed brought small victories. On the 5th day, he drank from the water dispenser while she was in the room. On the 6th, his amber eye tracked her without that constant vigilance, like he was starting to believe she wasn't a threat. On the 7th day, Kate noticed one of his old wounds looked infected. The scar tissue around his shoulder had started weeping, and the fur around it looked matted with pus. She'd grabbed her medical kit, the comprehensive one she kept for emergencies, and slowly approached. Hey big guy, she'd said softly, holding up the kit so he could see it. I need to look at that shoulder. It's infected, and infections in space are serious business. I promise I'll be gentle. He'd growled. It was a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the cargo bay floor and reminded her that this creature, old and wounded as he was, could still kill her without much effort. But he didn't move. Didn't snap. Didn't lunge. Kate had taken that as permission. She'd cleaned the wound carefully, applied antibiotic gel, and wrapped it with clean bandaging. Her hands had been steady, gentle, treating infected tissue with the kind of care she'd learned from her mother, who'd been a medic before becoming a miner. He'd growled once more when she'd hit a particularly painful spot, but he hadn't bitten. That meant something. Need to call you something, Kate had said, running a medical scanner over his shoulder to check for deeper infection. Can't keep calling you big guy, or the wolf, forever. How about Echo? She'd looked at his face, at the scars and the clouded eye and the gray muzzle. Because you're not just some number in a system. You're your own person. You deserve a real name. The Liker had tilted his head as if considering this. Then his tail had moved. Just a fraction, just the tiniest wag. But it was there. Echo. He was Echo now. 2 weeks passed in a comfortable routine. Echo ate regularly, let Kate tend his wounds, even started following her around the ship during her maintenance work. He moved slowly, his limp pronounced, but there was something different in the way he carried himself. Less defeated. More alive. Then Kate's datapad pinged with a job offer that made her stomach drop. High-risk cargo run through the Ashern Belt, the kind of route most independent haulers avoided. Pirate territory. Dangerous. But the pay was triple her usual rate, and she had bills to pay and a ship to maintain. She looked at Echo, who had positioned himself near the ship's main entrance like he'd done every evening. His military instincts hadn't died. They'd just been hibernated, waiting for a reason to wake up. Guess we're in this together now, Kate said, more to herself than to him. Echo's response was simple. He lay down across the threshold, his large body blocking the entrance. Not preventing her from leaving. Guarding it. Protecting his pack. For the first time in 15 cycles, Kravik 7 Alpha, now called Echo, felt something he'd thought was dead and buried. Purpose. The medical convoy assembled at the jump point like a flock of nervous birds trying to decide which way to fly. 12 cargo ships of various sizes and designs floated in loose formation, their running lights creating a constellation against the backdrop of empty space. Each ship carried critical supplies for a plague-stricken colony in the outer rim, medical equipment and vaccines that couldn't wait for the safer, longer routes. Kate's ship, the Wanderer, was by far the smallest vessel in the group. She floated at the edge of the formation, feeling distinctly out of place among the larger commercial haulers with their corporate logos and reinforced hulls. Her ship was a patchwork of repairs and modifications, the kind of vessel that screamed, independent contractor barely making ends meet. The convoy channel crackled with chatter as captains ran their pre-jump checks. Most of it was professional, routine stuff. But Kate could hear the undercurrent of tension. Everyone knew what route they were taking. Everyone knew the risks. That's the human ship? A voice cut through the general chatter, loud enough that it was clearly meant to be heard. Kate looked at her view screen and saw a massive reptilian captain aboard a ship 3 times her size. His scales were a deep bronze color, and his eyes were cold as he gestured dismissively at the Wanderer. "Looks like it'll fall apart if we jump too hard." Another captain chimed in, this one from a species Kate didn't recognize. "Is that a liker I'm reading on her bioscans? What's a human doing with military-grade fauna?" "Probably picked it up at a discount auction," the reptilian captain said with a snort that translated poorly through the comm system. "Look at the readings. That thing's ancient. Half dead by the look of it." "Humans," someone else muttered, and Kate could hear the dismissal in their voice. "Always collecting broken things. Like they're running a charity instead of a business." Kate gritted her teeth and kept her mouth shut. She needed this job. The credits would keep her flying for another 3 months, and right now that mattered more than her pride. Echo, lying in the cargo bay, raised his head slightly as if sensing her frustration. "All ships prepare for jump," the convoy leader announced. "We'll be entering the Ashern Belt. Stay in formation. Don't break away unless absolutely necessary. We're stronger together." The jump itself was smooth enough. One moment they were at the edge of civilized space, the next they were in the belt, 3 days of mostly empty void that served as the shortest route to the outer colonies. It was also the favorite hunting ground for every pirate, raider, and opportunistic criminal in the sector. The first day passed without incident. Ships maintained their formation, captains kept their chatter to a minimum, and everyone's sensors swept the surrounding space for threats. Kate barely slept, catching an hour here and there while Echo kept watch by the bridge entrance. The second day started the same way. Routine sensor sweeps, course corrections, the monotonous reality of deep space travel. Kate was halfway through a terrible cup of synthetic coffee when every alarm on her ship started screaming at once. "Contact! Multiple contacts!" someone yelled over the convoy channel. 3 ships, Vector 270, closing fast. Kate's hands flew over her controls, pulling up the sensor data. 3 raider vessels, smaller than most of the convoy ships but faster and heavily armed. They were coming in at attack speed, clearly not interested in negotiation. "Scatter!" the reptilian captain's voice boomed over the channel. "Every ship for themselves." And just like that, the convoy broke apart. The larger ships engaged their engines, fleeing in different directions. The solidarity and cooperation from 5 minutes ago evaporated like water in vacuum. Kate watched in disbelief as ship after ship abandoned the formation, their captains prioritizing their own survival over everything else. The Wanderer was suddenly very alone, very exposed, and very obviously the weakest target in the area. The pirates saw it too. All 3 raider ships adjusted course, vectoring toward her position with clear intent. Kate's hands shook as she tried to plot an escape route, but her ship was slow, old, and couldn't outrun dedicated attack vessels. Come on," she muttered, pushing her engines as hard as they could go. The ship shuddered beneath her, protesting the strain. The first raider closed the distance in seconds. Kate heard the terrible crunch of boarding clamps slamming into her hull, felt the ship lurch sideways from the impact. Red emergency lights flooded the corridor as her computer screamed warnings about hull breaches. Cutting torches ignited against her airlock door. She could see the bright blue-white flame through the security camera feed, watching as the reinforced metal began to glow and melt. They'd be through in less than a minute. Kate grabbed her pistol from the emergency locker, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She'd never shot at a living being before. Never wanted to. But right now it was either fight or die. "Echo, stay back," she called toward the cargo bay, her voice cracking with fear. "I'll handle this. Just stay." Echo was already moving. She heard him before she saw him, the clicking of claws on metal floor, the heavy breathing of a predator who'd just woken up to find his pack threatened. He rounded the corner at a speed she didn't think his old body could manage anymore, heading straight for the airlock. The outer door exploded inward. The first pirate through was some kind of insectoid species, armed with a plasma cutter still glowing from its work on the door. He had maybe half a second to register what was coming at him. Echo hit him like a freight train made of fur and fury. The pirate went down screaming and the sound cut off abruptly. The second pirate through the door managed to raise his weapon before Echo was on him too. The narrow corridor became a nightmare of gray fur, white fangs, and sounds Kate would hear in her nightmares for years. Echo didn't fight like a young warrior trying to prove himself. He didn't waste movement or energy. Every strike was calculated, efficient, lethal. He used the narrow space to his advantage, preventing multiple opponents from surrounding him. He anticipated their movements, positioning himself where they'd be a split second before they got there. Age had taken his speed, but it had given him something more valuable: experience. 4 pirates pushed into the corridor, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. Echo dropped low, using the limited ceiling height against them. A plasma rifle fired and Kate screamed a warning, but Echo had already moved. The shot missed, hitting a pirate instead. Then one of them got a clear shot at Kate, standing frozen at the far end of the corridor. The plasma rifle swung toward her, and time seemed to slow down. She saw the weapon charge, saw the pirate's finger tighten on the trigger, knew she was about to die. Echo lunged. He threw his entire body between Kate and the blast. The plasma round hit his already wounded shoulder, burning through fur and flesh. The smell of burned meat filled the air. But Echo didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not when his pack was in danger. The pirates broke. They retreated back through the airlock, abandoning their assault in the face of something they hadn't expected. Within seconds, the boarding clamps released and the raider ships were pulling away, running from a single old wolf who'd refused to let them win. Echo took 3 steps toward Kate, then collapsed. She dropped to her knees beside him, hands pressing against the burned fur on his shoulder. The wound was terrible, charred flesh and exposed tissue. No, no, no. Echo, stay with me. Please. The convoy channel crackled to life. The reptilian captain's voice, stripped of its earlier mockery. Human vessel, this is... We saw what happened. Do you need medical assistance? Kate looked up at her view screen, tears streaming down her face, her hands covered in Echo's blood. Yes, please. Help him. Another captain spoke, and Kate heard something she hadn't expected. What? I asked that creature? Kate looked down at Echo's massive head, at the scarred face and clouded eye, at the body that had given everything to protect her. Her voice broke. He's family. The colony's medical facility was better equipped than Kate had any right to expect. The plague they were fighting had brought in specialists from across the sector, and with them came advanced equipment that most frontier worlds could only dream about. Within 20 minutes of docking, Echo was on a surgical table surrounded by alien doctors who'd never treated a liker before but were determined to figure it out. Kate stood at the observation window, hands pressed against the glass, watching every movement inside. She'd been standing there for 6 hours now, refusing every offer to sit down, refusing food, refusing anything that would take her attention away from that table. The plasma burn had gone deep. She could see the doctors working, their instruments moving carefully through damaged tissue. Echo's massive chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, kept alive by machines while they repaired what the pirates had destroyed. Miss Miller? A voice spoke behind her, calm and measured. Kate didn't turn around. If you're here to tell me I need to leave, save your breath. I'm not going anywhere. Actually, I came to speak with you about your companion. The speaker moved into her peripheral vision. He was tall, maybe 7 feet, with fur similar to Echo's but lighter in color and unmarked by scars. His species was clearly related to the liker, but more refined, standing upright with clothing that marked him as someone important. I saw the military tattoos during his initial scan. That's Packmaster Kravik. I thought he was dead. Kate finally turned to look at him. His name is Echo. His designation is Kravik 7 Alpha, the alien corrected gently. One of the most decorated warriors in Venturan military history. The stories about him are legendary among my people. He led assault teams through impossible situations and brought his pack home alive more times than anyone could count. The alien's eyes held something like reverence. When he disappeared from the service records 3 years ago, we assumed he'd fallen in battle. To find him here, alive, is remarkable. He was at an auction, Kate said flatly. Being sold for scrap because nobody wanted an old soldier anymore. The alien's expression shifted, something that might have been shame crossing his features. The military contracts out retired personnel to private security firms. Sometimes those contracts are sold to other parties. It's not perfect, but it's supposed to ensure they have value after their service ends. Value, Kate repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. He was going to be processed for organs. The alien was quiet for a moment, looking through the observation window at Echo on the surgical table. Word is already spreading. When the Venturan homeworld learns that Packmaster Kravik lives, they will want him returned. There will be honor ceremonies, military parades, museums dedicated to his service. He'll be celebrated as the hero he truly is. He pulled out a small credit chip and placed it on the ledge by the window. Kate glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. The number displayed was more money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes of cargo hauling. This is what my government is authorized to offer, the alien continued. For his safe return. For ensuring he spends his final days honored by his own people, not living as a pet to an alien who cannot understand what he truly needs. That word. But it hit Kate like a physical blow. She looked through the window again. Echo was still unconscious, still being worked on by doctors who were fighting to save his life. His shoulder was a mess of burned tissue and trauma. The fight with the pirates had taken everything his old body had left to give. Would he be happier there? Kate asked quietly, the question hurting to even voice. With his own kind? Being honored instead of pitted? The alien seemed surprised by the question. Of course. Like are pack creatures at their core. They need their own kind, their own culture, their traditions. A human cannot provide that, no matter how well-intentioned. Kate spent the next 3 days thinking about it while Echo recovered. The doctors had managed to save the shoulder, though he'd lost even more mobility on that side. He was stable but weak, sleeping most of the time while his body tried to heal from trauma it was too old to properly handle. She sat beside his recovery bed during those days watching him sleep. Other convoy captains stopped by to check on them. Even the reptilian captain who'd mocked her showed up, looking uncomfortable. Your creature saved the convoy, he said gruffly. When those pirates saw what happened to their boarding party, they broke off their attack on the rest of us. We all made it through because of him. On the third night, Echo woke up. His amber eye found Kate immediately, and something in that gaze made her decision feel both easier and harder at the same time. The Venturans want you back, she told him, keeping her voice steady. They're offering a fortune. They'll honor you, celebrate you, give you everything a hero deserves. She swallowed hard. And maybe that's what you need. Maybe you'd be happier with your own kind in a place where people understand what you've been through. Echo listened, his eye never leaving her face. That night, after visiting hours ended and the medical facility went quiet, alarms started going off. Security found Echo at the docking bay, lying across the threshold of the Wanderer's airlock. He'd torn out his 4 lines, disconnected his monitoring equipment, and dragged his wounded body through the facility's corridors to get there. He wasn't trying to get inside the ship. He was waiting. Waiting for Kate. When she arrived, running and panicked, Echo pressed his scarred muzzle into her hand. His tail thumped once against the metal deck. The message was crystal clear. Pack wasn't determined by species or culture or tradition. Pack was choice. And he'd made his. Kate faced the Venturan diplomat the next morning. Her voice was steady, final. He's not going. You would deny him his heritage? The alien demanded, anger replacing his earlier politeness. His culture? His own people? Kate looked the diplomat straight in the eye. His people sold him when he got old. His culture decided he was worthless. His heritage put him in a cage. Her voice was steel wrapped in calm. I'm offering him a home. He's already made his choice. The diplomat left, furious and empty-handed. The story spread through human channels within hours, shared by every cargo hauler and independent contractor who'd ever felt undervalued or discarded. Another human had just said what they all believed deep down. Worth wasn't measured in usefulness or productivity. It was measured in heartbeats and choices and the simple fact of being alive. Echo rested his head on Kate's lap that evening, finally at peace. He'd chosen his pack. And his pack had chosen him right back. After years of searching, traveling across galaxies, and exploring countless worlds, the mission finally brings everyone back to where it all started. But something feels different now. It's not just about returning to a familiar place. It's about seeing home through completely new eyes. The ship enters Earth's atmosphere slowly. Everyone gathers near the windows, pressing their faces against the glass. Some haven't seen their home planet in what feels like a lifetime. Others were born during the journey and only heard stories about the blue planet. Now here it is, right in front of them, more beautiful than any description could capture. The oceans look like liquid sapphire from up here. The clouds move in slow, graceful patterns. The green forests and brown mountains create a patchwork of colors that no other planet could match. Someone wipes away tears. Another person laughs softly, overwhelmed by the moment. This is home. This is where everything began. Landing procedures start immediately. The excitement on board is almost tangible. People start talking about the things they missed most. Real rain. The smell of fresh grass. The sound of birds in the morning. Simple things that became precious during long years in space. The ship touches down gently in a designated area. The doors open and for a moment nobody moves. Then, slowly people start stepping out. The first breath of Earth air hits differently. It's warmer, richer, filled with scents that machines could never replicate. Some people kneel down and touch the ground with their bare hands, feeling the soil, the grass, the realness of it all. Families are waiting. The reunion scenes are overwhelming. Parents who aged while their children explored the stars. Children who grew up hearing stories about brave relatives in space. Brothers, sisters, friends, loved ones all coming together after what felt like forever. Hugs last longer than usual. Words get stuck in throats. Happy tears flow freely. But the mission isn't just about emotional reunions. There's important work to be done. The data collected, the samples gathered, the observations made, all of it needs to be shared with Earth's scientists and leaders. Debriefing sessions begin almost immediately. Room after room fills with researchers eager to learn what was discovered out there in the vastness of space. The findings are remarkable. Evidence of water on distant moons. Atmospheric conditions on planets that might support different forms of life. Mineral compositions that could revolutionize technology. Patterns in cosmic radiation that challenge existing theories. Every piece of information opens new doors, raises new questions, inspires new missions. Press conferences are organized. The world wants to know what happened out there. Reporters ask endless questions. Cameras flash constantly. The crew members do their best to explain their experiences, but words often fall short. How do you describe the silence of deep space? How do you convey the feeling of witnessing a supernova from a relatively safe distance? How do you make people understand the loneliness and wonder of being so far from home? Recognition comes in many forms. Award ceremonies. Public honors. University lectures. Documentary filmmakers requesting interviews. Children writing letters asking about life in space. The crew members handle it all with grace, always emphasizing that this was a team effort, that every single person on that ship played a crucial role. But beyond the celebrations and the scientific achievements, something deeper happens. The experience changes how people think about Earth. After seeing dozens of barren planets, hostile environments, and lifeless rocks floating in the void, coming home makes everyone realize how incredibly special this planet is. The abundance of life here, the perfect conditions, the delicate balance that makes everything possible, it all seems almost miraculous now. Environmental awareness grows stronger. People who traveled through dead worlds become passionate advocates for protecting Earth. They speak at schools, community centers, and government meetings. Their message is simple but powerful. We searched the universe and found nothing quite like home. We need to take care of it. The mission also brings people together in unexpected ways. National boundaries seem less important after traveling through boundless space. Political differences feel smaller after facing cosmic challenges as one crew. The perspective gained from seeing Earth as a tiny blue dot in an enormous universe creates a sense of unity that's hard to explain but impossible to ignore. Life gradually returns to normal, but normal has a new meaning now. Daily routines resume. Jobs continue. Bills still need to be paid. But there's an underlying appreciation for everything. The simple act of walking outside without a spacesuit. The luxury of unlimited fresh water. The comfort of gravity that doesn't need to be artificially generated. Home isn't just a place anymore. It's a feeling. It's an appreciation. It's understanding that in all the vastness of space, in all the planets and stars and galaxies, this one small world gave humanity everything it needed to dream, explore, and eventually find its way back. And that makes all the difference.